So today we read Sārangpur 2, which is all about developing affection for the form of God. And by the title alone, I suspect that this is all about how we can develop a formful appreciation of the divine. Of course, in the ultimate sense, that source is beyond all possible form. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a form that we can connect to. A personal form, like, for example, Sri Radha Krishna, or in other religions, the Christian tradition, there's the Christ, the Son. It's a personal form to connect with, something that's halfway between the divine and us as human beings. There's a practicality to having a personal form. I hope we go into that aspect in this passage. Danny, you're wondering, when did I get this book or hear about it? It was given to me a few months ago now by one of our viewers who grew up surrounded by this tradition. They no longer are in it today, but because they had a lot of appreciation for it, they sent it my way for us to read. And it's rarely read to an English audience. In fact, as far as I know, I'm the only person on the internet reading the English edition of this text, so it's an exclusive experience for you. On Shravan Vadhi the 6th, Samvat 1877, which is the 29th of August, 1820. Anyone born on that day? Probably not. Shriji Maharaj was sitting facing north on a large decorated cot, which had been placed on the veranda outside the north-facing rooms of Jiva Khachar's Darbar in Sārangpur. That's one day after your birthday, Magdalene. He was wearing a white case and had tied a white pug around his head. He had also covered himself with a white blanket. At that time, an assembly of munis, as well as devotees from various places, had gathered before him. Munis are scholars. Then, addressing the munis, Shriji Maharaj said, "Please begin a question and answer session amongst yourselves." Thereupon, Swayam Prakashananda Swami asked, "By what means can a devotee of the divine develop intense affection for the form of God?" The munis then attempted to answer that question amongst themselves, but were unable to do so satisfactorily. So Shriji Maharaj began to reply, "Affection can develop due to beauty, due to lust, due to avarice, due to some selfish motives, or due to other persons' virtues. Of these, affection which stems from beauty lasts only until one sees for example, disfigurement caused by leprosy in another person's body. If we only find something on the surface beautiful, then the moment what's on the surface changes, then our affection will not continue. Or until the person develops leukodorma, thereafter the surface level affection which once existed would dissolve. In the same way, affection stemming from avarice, lust, and selfishness also ultimately dissolves. But affection developed due to the other person's virtues, however, ultimately survives. We see something beautiful in the virtues that they uphold, their kindness, their prosperity, their peacefulness, their ability to mend situations, that kind of thing. That ultimately survives. Then Somla Khachar asked Shriji Maharaj, which virtues are these? External ones or internal ones? To this, Shriji Maharaj replied, how is it possible to develop affection due to external virtues? Rather, it is affection stemming from the virtues of the person's speech, thoughts, and deeds that does not dissolve. Now, are you asking only about a devotee developing affection for God? Or are you also asking about God developing affection for the devotee? Swayam Prakashanand Swami clarified, we are asking about both. Shriji Maharaj then began to elaborate by saying, one should not hurt any living being with one's speech. Moreover, during a question-answer session where principles are being debated with God and a senior sadhu, senior monk, even then, those who are junior should yield to those who are senior. Also, in an assembly, one should not ask questions that may embarrass a sadhu who is senior to one. Rather, one should purposely accept defeat before the divine and a senior sadhu. Also, one should lovingly and immediately accept the visionary command or the commanding vision of the divine and a senior sadhu. Agna. Regardless of whether it seems appropriate or inappropriate, given our limited understanding. Of these, one would not doubt an appropriate command. But even if it seems inappropriate and leads to doubt, one should not merely refuse to abide by it, at least at that time. One should strongly agree and say, Maharaj, I will just do as you say. The Guru Shishya tradition is very strong here about having a spiritual master that will completely surrender one's intellect to. It can make for a very easy spiritual progress without raising doubts. But there are, of course, contexts in which doubts naturally emerge. The assumption here is that we've already established that the person whom you are not to doubt is a qualified teacher, that they're not there for any selfish intent or for personal gain, so that you don't be taken advantage of. That's important. Which is why it's always important that the context and who is speaking is established at the beginning of each passage. Here we have munis, scholars, and there are monks and senior sadhus who have been studying these kinds of things for a long time. Anyway. Maharaj, I will do just as you say. If that command is such that one cannot accept it, and if it is the wish of the divine and a senior sadhu to hear one's plea, then one should fold one's hands before them and say with bhakti, say with loving devotion, Maharaj, the command which you gave me is fine, but I have certain doubts about it. In this manner, one should speak modestly. However, if it is not really the wish of the divine to hear one's plea, then one should tell a senior sadhu or a devotee who is close to them, although the divine has given such a command, I simply cannot accept it. Thereafter, the senior sadhu would find a compromise and would also speak to the divine to help make a compromise regarding the command. But regardless of whether the command seems appropriate or inappropriate, one should not immediately refuse to abide by it. Rather, one should use such courtesy to delay the following of the command given by those who are seniors. Delay. This happens with our mind too. When our mind is saying, we should really do this, we should not do that. But if our higher self knows we should delay the mind. Sometimes it's hard to flat out deny the mind, but at least delay it. This is how one should behave regarding the virtue of speech. As a result, the divine and the senior sadhu develop affection for that devotee, and that devotee also develops strong affection towards the divine. Now, how should one behave physically? Well, if one's body seems to be hyperactive, one should weaken it by engaging in worship or by observing the Chandrayan vow. I'm unfamiliar of what this vow includes. It's a funny point here. If the body is hyperactive, we can exhaust it. we can make it more relaxed by engaging in worship. Then, on noticing this, if the divine or a senior sadhu takes care of one's body, it is well and good, but one should not knowingly take care of one's own body. Did I read that right? Oh, I did. We leave it in the hands of the divine to take care of our body according to this tradition. Also, one should physically serve the divine and the divine's devotees. When the divine or that great sadhu notice a person behaving in this manner, physically they develop affection for them, and that devotee also develops affection for the divine. Now, I shall describe the manner in which a person should behave regarding the virtues of the mind. When a devotee does darshan, when they see the divine, they should do so with an attentive mind and concentrated vision. Instead, when a person disturbs, or a dog barks, or some other animal or bird disturbs while they are doing darshan of the divine, they break in their vritti. They break in their thought force. Grateful human, you are asking for clarification. Divine is senior sadhu, right? I'm referring here to God. In fact, the word in the text is God. But I feel like in English, the word God has a lot of connotations that's probably not implied by whatever language they're translating from, Gujarati, I think. So I just use a more general term, the divine, the source. Alright, where was I? Instead, when a person's mind is disturbed while doing darshan of the divine, of God, they break in their vritti, their thoughts, from the divine's witnessing, and begin to glance to and fro, up and down, and also seize them simultaneously. The divine and the senior sadhu are not at all pleased upon seeing a person with such wandering vision. So, when such a person does do darshan, how do they do it? Well, they do it in just as any ordinary person does. One who has such a mundane vision should be known to be like a squirrel that squeaks and raises its tail simultaneously. They do darshan of the divine and notice other objects at the same time. Maybe it would be good to add the context to what this term in Sanskrit darshan means. Darshan literally means sight, but specifically it refers to the ritual process of bringing to mind's eye the form of your Ishta Devata, the personal form of the divine which you connect to. When we are doing darshan, it can be with the help of a murti, a divine image, like an art piece. Or it could be a statue, but it can also be an image that we cast upon the screen of our mind. When such a person begins to do darshan in such a mundane manner, they have awareness for other things that are taking up their mind as well. They do not remain as pious as they previously were. In fact, they may decline day by day. Therefore, while doing darshan, one should not look from side to side. The novelty and divinity experienced in one's heart at the time of the first darshan of the divine should remain exactly the same. Moreover, one should look at the form with a fixed gaze, and then closing one's eyes, one should internalize that form exactly as it is in one's heart. For example, in Dharmapur, Kushal Kuvar Bhai did my darshan, and at the same time closed her eyes and internalized the form in her heart. Similarly, one should do darshan while keeping an attentive mind and a fixed gaze, but one should not do darshan as ordinary people do. If, along with the darshan of the divine, one also looks at other people, or cats or dogs, then when one has a dream, one sees not only the divine, but also those other objects. That is why one should do darshan of the divine with a fixed gaze, and not with a wandering gaze. One who does darshan of the divine while keeping one's sight under control will feel that darshan to be continually novel. In addition, one would also feel any commands that the divine may have given to be novel. On the other hand, a person who does darshan superficially, with a mundane vision, would feel God's darshan and commands to be commonplace. Although they may do darshan every day, for such a person it as if they have not done darshan at all. When such a person engages in worship, their mind would not remain stable. Specifically, when they attempt to concentrate on the divine while their thinking is diffused, other objects they may have seen would spontaneously sprout in their mind along with the divine. Therefore, one should do darshan of only the divine. The mind of one who does darshan in such a manner remains only on the divine during worship. Their thinking does not become diffused. Instead, it becomes concentrated. Furthermore, I am able to discern when one is doing darshan with wandering eyes. A great sadhu whose own sight and mind are kept under control also realizes this person is doing darshan in a superficial manner. One who does darshan in such a mundane manner then begins to decline from this fellowship day by day. For example, a person who is overcome by their lust firmly and with a focused mind fixes their gaze on someone they're attracted to. If at that time some animal or bird were to pass by or make a noise, they would not notice it. In the same way, one should attach oneself to the divine with a similarly focused gaze, but one should not do darshan in a mundane manner. Then, Nirvikaranand Swami raised a doubt. Maharaj, we have to travel and speak to people all over the country. As a result, our mind does not remain concentrated. In reply, Shriji Maharaj questioned, I have given a command for you to speak to people. But when have I ever given a command for you to disregard the darshan of this form and do darshan of other things? Having said this, Maharaj continued, the same divinity that one feels when one has darshan of the form of the divine for the first time can be retained if one keeps one's mind and gaze fixed on God. So when one behaves in this manner, in accordance with the virtues of the mind previously mentioned, then the attention that the divine has for that devotee remains ever fresh. Moreover, the affection which that devotee has towards the divine also constantly remains ever fresh. Moreover, both the eyes and ears should especially be kept under control. This is because when worldly talks are prevalent everywhere, and if one is attracted towards them through the vritti, the thought force of the ears, and one listens to them, then all of those worldly words would be recalled when one attempts to engage oneself in worship. Furthermore, anything seen by one who has a wandering gaze is also recalled during worship. That is why both of these indriyas, these senses, should be kept strictly under control, the eyes and the ears. However, if while doing darshan of God's form, the vritti, the thought force of one's eyes and ears, leaves the form aside and is attracted towards other things, one should reprimand them, saying, "O fools!" We are talking to the eyes and the ears. "O fools! What are you going to achieve by looking at forms other than divinity itself, and by listening to other words than the talks of that omnipresent? As of yet, you have not attained any yogic powers whereby you can instantly receive whatever you wish. This is because you are still in the process of enlightenment. So you are not going to be able to obtain those vishais, those objects of the senses, sense objects that you desire. So why are you futilely grasping for them and leaving the divine aside? Moreover, even if you were to attain some insignificant vishai, sense object, then, due to the sin incurred as a result, there will be no end to the beatings you will receive in Yampuri, which is the abode of death. I've never heard of talking to one's eyes and ears in such a reprimanding way. In this manner, one should reprimand one's eyes and ears. Furthermore, one should also tell them, and by the way, the reason we were talking about our eyes and ears as individual beings is because as sense organs, as indriyas, it's said that there are individual indras, which are deities that are in charge of each sense. So our eyes have a presiding deity, our ears too. So we're talking to the indriya, the indra responsible for that form of experience. It's interesting. Hey. Furthermore, one should also tell them, when you become stabilized in this form of God, you will be enlightened in this very life. We can enlighten our ears. We can enlighten our eyes. Think about that. As a result, you will be able to naturally hear any talk occurring in any Brahmand, any universe. If you desire to have a charming form like that of Brahma, Vishnu, or Shiva, the creator, the preserver, or the destroyer, then you will be able to attain such a form. Or if you wish to become a devotee like Lakshmi or Radhika, then you will become so. Moreover, if while worshipping the divine you do not attain enlightenment in this death, in this very life, you will attain enlightenment after death, when you become a mukta, a liberated being. But without becoming enlightened, even if you constantly look at some charming object until you die, you will still not be able to attain that charm. We're still talking to the eyes and ears, by the way. Furthermore, even if you listen to worldly talks until you die, you will still not attain anything, rather. Your mind will become extremely polluted by it. It's important to bring our eyes and ears to see good, hear good. One should advise one's eyes and ears in this manner, and keep them fixed only on the form of the divine. And that's our own eyes and our own ears, by the way. A person who behaves in such a manner increasingly develops affection for the form of the divine day by day. As a result, God's and the great sadhu's affection for that devotee also increases day by day. Thank you for listening. That was the end of that passage in the Vachanāmrut. So, the way to develop affection for a form of the divine is to constantly have our attention fixed without having it gone away to any worldly, material experience of the senses. Thank you for listening.